It is 6:30 p.m. on June 17th. We will open up the public hearing for the discussion of the Town of Barre finance budget and warrant article for our annual town meeting on June 24th.
Mr. Chair, the selectmen are here in quorum, so we would open our meeting as well. Could I have a motion to open our meeting?
I move to open select board meeting, joint with the finance committee.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion made and seconded to open the select board meeting in quorum. Thank you.
Excellent. And just a friendly reminder, this meeting is being recorded, broadcasted live. Is there anybody else recording today? Excellent. And we will get right into the budget review for the town meeting.
Mr. Lewis, could you just, I think there's some department heads here.
Yes.
They probably have some comments or questions of concern, so I don't know how you want to address them or see what information they may have to share. We also have some very brief information from the Department of Local Services, from the Department of Revenue too, that might be of interest to us.
Okay. Do we want to take comments on those?
Your choice, your choice.
What's up? Yeah, I mean, what we'll do is, when we normally go through the budget, we'll go through, not usually line by line, but bottom line for each department. And with the understanding that we are operating this year on two budgets, with a Proposition 2.5 override pending. So there's a budget that will need to be approved. That's a balanced budget at town meeting, with a secondary budget that will be proposed. That's more of a level services budget, keeping our current services where they are as the department's requested, but it's above the levy limit. So we're going to be talking about the balanced budget and then also the override budget. Any questions on that?
Just information that I think we did not fund them, okay, even with the override, to ensure level services, okay? There's not, for example, in the police department, they could not provide the same level of service even with the override. I'm guessing the chief will be here this evening to speak to that issue.
We got Lieutenant
DPW is the
Brown
same.
here.
DPW is the same thing, the library the same thing, so there could be some tweaks there if that would be, you know, in anyone's interest.
Excellent. All right. So how, Ms. Phillips?
Will you stand? Will you someone explain the difference of services briefly based on budget A and budget B?
Absolutely. So in the budget outline, you'll see there's in the far right-hand column, the override amount. So that is the amount when we enter one of those items that we'll look at, like the reserve funds, for example. The balanced budget that we're voting for would be a $5,000 tabulation to that department. To fund that line or that fund at the amount that we feel that we need it to be funded at, or the amount that was presented to the finance committee, that's the override amount. So that's going to be the secondary budget.
And if the department manager would like to make a comment on each budget, they could discuss what's going to be cut.
Right. Absolutely. That's, we have a full room today, so I'm sure there'll be some robust conversation. All right, so let's just go through first. The moderator stipend, that's unchanged over the years. With a moderator, a $50 stipend, no change there. We move on to the select board budget. The select board, we see that the budget in FY25 was $160,000. FY26, the requested amount $200,226, and that's an increase mostly for bringing the town administrator's salary back up to where it was voted close to 2 years ago at $103,000. And what happened is the town administrator was hired at a reduced rate, but now that we have to go back to market for a new town administrator, we need to be back up to a town administrator rate.
And there was a requested department, a request that has been just excluded from the balanced budget, which was an additional person in the select board office part-time. So that's-
Correct.
That's out of the budget now.
Yeah, the administrative clerk position was removed from the budget. Thank you for that.
And the town administrator, that figure is expecting someone with some experience, or no?
We would hope.
We would,
We would hope.
We can hope, yeah.
It's kind of low for experience. That number is maybe a year of experience.
I think over the years, I think we've learned what we need.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna budget for what we need?
We may have to.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Just
the
remember,
question.
Sam, there's a difference between wants and needs.
My thought is for it to get a TA, that,
You're right, no, I said.
yeah, probably be closer to like 150. Someone with experience applying from another town.
Don't put those in his wish.
Any other discussion on the select board?
the only concern that we have obviously is that as we look at the applicants that we currently have, there is not one with experience. I mean, for now, and that could change, but currently, we're not looking at 3 or 4 even that we can look at with experience. We have some really excellent, we think, accountant, financial manager types, but not necessarily who've been in the position of a town administrator. So, we know that we want to be able to do 110 and make it all work, but I'm just nervous about that.
You didn't advertise it with a price, though.
I'm sorry, no, we did not, commensurate with experience. Right. Because we didn't want to lock ourselves into too low or too high.
I do not disagree with that. And even with that administrative clerk position, you know, that department operating with 2 individuals, it's tough. It's tough. I mean, that number should almost be put into the override as well.
Yeah. Well, I certainly would make that recommendation if it made any difference.
So you're asking for an increase of almost 50,000, right? 40-something thousand?
On the,
Because you're getting a new administrative clerk, you raise the price of the executive administrative assistant to 61.
the difference would be that,
And the town administrator's salary is gonna go from 92 to 110.
correct.
So
The
that's in the $40,000 to $50,000 range is what you're asking extra for the,
17,342. So the number there, because the administrative clerk position was eliminated from the budget.
for the 25 budget, but in 26 you're adding it back in, right?
No, if you, the column you want to pay attention is the FY 26 balance.
Where it says balanced, that's the.
Okay.
Okay. And
It's got a
then,
line.
and then the final column is the amount that would be in an override.
All right.
Okay?
Yep, I'm sorry.
Oh, not at all.
You see it?
If we were to add that number into the override, then yes, it would be closer to the $40,000 mark. Finance committee expenses, no change there. That covers, you know, the finance committee booklets, association fees. The reserve funds, here's that line we just discussed. So the reserve fund is a unique fund that the town of Barre doesn't really utilize that often, but it is an important tool to helping balance the budget. A town our size would usually have a reserve fund of roughly $150,000 for 5,000 people. We've been operating with a rather slim reserve fund, and that fund can help offset unexpected increases to the budget where a department could come into the finance committee and request funds to it helps prevent the town from going to a special town meeting because they need $10,000 to fix an ambulance or a cruiser or something along those lines. And so we're trying to bring that fund back up to at least $20,000, but we balance the budget here by keeping it reduced at the $5,000, by asking the town to potentially increase that $20,000 with a portion of it through an override. So that would be the secondary budget for that particular line. Any questions on that?
What's the fund balance now?
$5,000.
So we didn't spend any of it?
We didn't use the fund this year.
Okay.
We started with $20,000 in that special town meeting. We reduced it to by $15,000 to balance the FY25 budget.
Mhm.
And so our current balance is $5,000.
Very good.
The accounting department. Is mostly level funded, with the exception of an increase for the town audit line. I don't know if our accountant is here to speak to this. No.
We did not seek, okay, we did not go out to look for an RFP on this. You don't have to, it's auditing services. This, you can see a really large jump. It now, pretty much the only company that you have access to, pretty much, is CBiz, because Markham bought out most of the little places that we would use, Melanson and Heath, Powers and Sullivan, those were our people in the past, much cheaper. Then Markham bought them out, so then Markham, okay, went as high as, 25, and then CBiz came in and took over Markham, and CBiz has taken over all of the school accounts as well across the state. It's insane, and, just increasing it by leaps and bounds, so we don't have to go to an RFP. We could try, because we're a very small operation, you never know, but right now, it doesn't look like an easy thing for us to get done. That's a pretty hefty increase.
Yeah, for a year over year.
Yeah, I mean, for a town of budget, about $14 million?
Well, this year, on the audit, it was a $39,000 expense.
So that was because we did a fraud audit?
Okay.
That was an extra 35 that was paid out of ARPA.
And there's 13,000 left in that account now that, if it's unexpended, will carry over.
Great.
We had 26 carryover from FY24 into FY25. Any other questions on accounting? Comments? Great. The Board of Assessors. So the Board of Assessors, this is level funded, but we do have to acknowledge that there's an article. Jesse, you want to speak to that?
Yes. So there's two articles that we requested. The first being, I believe that was the one that asked for the right to, it's basically just authorizing us to pay one of our Board of Assessors to work in a part-time capacity for us. We've done this in the past. It just gives us another person that we can hire impromptu if we need to. The second, because we have to have that right approved at town meeting every year. The second article, it's very similar to ones that we've run in previous town meetings. It's just requesting some funds for our annual budgeting for things like cyclical re-inspections, where we're required to visit each property in town at least once every 10 years according to the DOR, for reassessment for our 5-year period, where that can be very expensive, so we have to kind of add a little money to that every year to save up for it. We just spent a lot to hire Bishop and Associates to help us with our 2025 recertification. And so it's those amounts are for those funds. Cyclical for special assessments, which might be if we have to hire a commercial consultant to assess a commercial property, something like that. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yep.
These are all just necessary funds that we have to consider.
If those two pass, are we still under our 2.5
I think Greg built it into. the
It's
budget,
it,
right?
it's
Yeah,
built
it's-
in. So the second article that he spoke to was 28,200, and it's built into the expenditure plan.
Thank you for that, Jesse. Any other questions on the Board of Assessors?
What article number is that? Request?
16.
17.
17?
Yeah.
Yeah, Article 16 is the appointment of the
Yeah.
paid part-time assessor,
17, yep.
is the recertification of properties.
16 and 17.
Yep. Thanks.
So the treasurer and collector department, I believe, this, there was some shifting of some positions here. Is that correct?
No,
No? What's the redo?
no, I'm surprised, actually. I'm seeing a significant reduction in wage line for my department when I was assured that would not happen. I was asked to propose a potential cut budget if necessary. 2 budgets were given to you, one that was ordinary and one that had cuts in it, although this cut would be bigger than I had recommended as a possible cut to this, so. And the fact that it's not being restored if an override happens is surprising as well. This is all completely news to me. I don't know why there's 7,000 being cut and not restored if the override goes through. This will reduce services in treasury collection and will probably create problems because the other position is not getting much of a raise, but will probably end up receiving a lot of the work from any cut. So,
So you're talking about the assistant treasurer's salary?
yeah, I don't know why it's $7,000 less.
So you think that there obviously should be an amount that would equal current?
Yes, and that should have been part of the override sum. I'm surprised that this is the first news I'm seeing of a cut of that significance. Again, I had proposed possibly 6,000 if necessary. This is over 7. I was not told that that would happen. This will have a profound effect. In fact, I was told my department was probably not going to have this cut happen.
So tell me exactly the amount that you're talking about, 7,000 what?
It's 7,000, let's see, I just did the math based on what was recommended and what's being proposed in the balanced budget. The difference, 19,968, $7,212, which is at least $1,212 more than I had even proposed. And that, again, was if we had to have cuts. But then I was told my department was probably too essential for that. So I'm surprised that at minimum this wasn't built into the override to be restored.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Could it have been a typographical error?
Was that, yeah, Greg, remember last week?
No, there was
That's
not,
not the
it was
typo?
not. It was not. Where there were departments that submitted alternate budgets, the decision was made to go with the lower number.
This wasn't part of the employees, like, kind of switching. I know somebody was gonna drop hours in the clerk's office and then pick up hours somewhere else. It's just part of
Those are
that.
town.
No, that's totally different.
Every department, Greg, was requested to make those, and I'm not seeing cuts like that reflected across this budget, but every department was requested to do that. So if that is the case, why is my department having the cut, but other departments are not?
Well, Jake, you've given your number, and we'll take that under consideration.
I appreciate that,
Maybe because you're a lucky guy.
evidently.
7212.
And that would be in the override column. Okay.
Any other questions for comments on treasurer collector department? Legal?
Yeah, I guess I've got a question. I'm probably not following the spreadsheet properly. But if the fiscal budget was at 164,839 for the assessor's office, right? For the collector's office.
Well, 164,839, that was the FY '25, yep.
Okay, the FY '25. Then you've got an increased, you know, department request of 168.
Mm-hmm.
So to stay, the recommendation was at 168,418, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're coming up to keep it balanced at 161, that's not balanced for 25.
That's balanced for the overall budget for the town of FY '26.
26
Right, but so you're going with the, I don't know what the hell you're going.
Greg's
Well-
recommendation for us to live within balance budget.
Right,
He's
okay,
had to make
so
some cuts.
the 125 budget was 164,839. To be
Yeah.
balanced, it'd be 164,839.
No, balanced means to the new total that we have to drive to, okay?
For the whole, for
Yeah,
this,
for the
for this
whole thing.
coming fiscal year, to
Well-
balance that with what we have.
I kinda get it, but if his department is looking for, you know, he requested 168, I get that, right?
Yep.
And he was operating at 164 this year,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Now you've cut the budget by 3,700, right? So
Right, right.
balanced would, it says balanced would be 161, that's not balanced for his department.
No.
No, but
That's-
it's for the whole
That's,
town
that
budget.
that balance is, the town's budget balanced against our revenue plan for FY '26. So we need to be within 2.5% of the levy limit, right? And there's only certain areas where we can make cuts because the town has fixed costs. Alright, so like that department, it gets cut because our fixed costs exceed the amount of revenue the town's bringing in.
Okay, so to keep the whole town budget balanced
Correct.
is what you're,
And we're gonna
Your
see,
fiscal
we're gonna
26.
see this throughout this entire budget. That's the whole point that we need to know.
right, I was trying to figure out where the balancing came
Yeah.
in. It's not for that particular department.
Not
it's
for the
whole
department,
town.
for the overall
I got
budget.
it, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no worries.
I just didn't know how you did it.
No, we need to understand, that's why we're here.
And to bring the department whole, what Jake's saying is
We need 72.
we need 7212, which, you know, we could always make that recommendation to add it to the override. Legal saw an overall reduction to balance to 39,000. Tax title level funded. Technology. It has a 4,000 override there, so again, the balanced number in the columns is $4,000 less than requested. And to match the request number on these services, software, and IT expenses, that we would require a portion of the override to go to those budgets.
Election expense is an override number down there as well.
Correct. And that's where we get to the town clerk. So the town clerk overall, I know you had some movement, right? There was some with shifting some associates around with hours, right? That was part of that.
Yes, so, the assistant town clerk and the administrative town clerk were just kind of moved out, switched hours there. Because the assistant town clerk is requesting more hours for the planning, for the boards. So it would put her into a situation where we're paying overtime, time and a half for 2 part-time positions. So in order to alleviate that, I switched the hours, reduced those hours with the administrative part-time too, so that we're not paying overtime.
Okay.
Or we shouldn't be, anyway. The other thing that I just wanted to point out, that I'm concerned about is one way or another, we're having an override election. So the $10,000 that is contingent upon the override, I think needs to be budgeted in this year's budget, not if the override passes, because even if the override doesn't pass, we still gotta pay for the election.
You're right, sure.
So
why
I
are we
don't
doing
think
it
we
that
can
way?
really, I'm sorry?
Why are we doing it that way?
I'll take, that was me. We were trying to fit the budget within the available revenues. I won't say we were desperate, we were pretty close.
But we're gonna have an override vote.
Yeah,
at the
no,
town
what you
meeting,
said
and if it
makes a
fails,
lot of sense.
and then we're gonna go to a ballot election. If it fails, then we have to have a special town meeting to
Yeah.
fund the failed
So
amendment.
typically you have a town meeting in the fall before the tax rate is set. So the thought was, my thought, was that you could secure those monies at the fall town meeting, but if you prefer to put it in and budget it as part of the overall revenue plan, just need to kind of keep that in mind.
Can we not wait to have the special election until after the town meeting and see if it passes at town meeting? Because if it fails, there's no point having,
It's not, it's scheduled to be August 5th,
August 5th.
so it's pretty far after.
you can't reschedule it.
Why would I want to reschedule it?
We haven't gone to the town meeting
What
yet.
does
They
it
can always come
August.
back to town meeting. If it fails at town meeting, they could, and it passes at the election, they could always bring it back
But
as
it
special
seems
if
like
it
you don't
passes
care
at
what
the
the
election.
town voters want to
The
say.
difference is at a
You
town
want this
meeting,
override to go through no matter what.
I want to share, I want to make sure that the people in the community are safe and cared for, and you and I will
Yeah.
disagree till we probably die, but I'm good with that.
Corey,
All the-
one other point that I just want to make is at a town meeting, we're lucky if we get 200 people to show up for a town meeting versus an election. We're going to have a lot better percentage of Barre voters coming out to vote for an election than we would at town meeting. That's just proven. So I think that if it was to pass on an election ballot, it would make sense to bring it back to town meeting because the majority of the people that voted in the election, I'm just saying there's a bigger population voting. I don't know. Does that make sense?
So this ballot election is going to occur.
Maybe they're looking for less people to vote on it.
I'm sorry?
Maybe they're looking for less people to vote on the 2.5 versus putting it on the election ballot.
Well, maybe.
Well, it goes on the ballot regardless.
It goes on the ballot
I'm
regardless.
just
Has
saying,
to.
Not if it
Two-step.
failed at town meeting, we don't put it
Well,
like
yes, I
that.
think
So all these
Well,
towns that
that's not
had
true.
failed, so I have a list of all the towns around here.
All right, we're gonna keep it on track for the conversation. We're on the budget.
At the ballot election, we're gonna be voting on other things.
No,
No.
no, just 2.5.
So it's only so it's costing us money to have the ballot election.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll cost
$1,000.
approximately, yeah, for the 2.5. And it's only fair to the voters of Barre to have a ballot, because there are folks that can't be here in person on the
But that's
town
the town
meeting.
meeting, if you go, there's your voice.
Yes.
Does the town meeting not mean anything?
Have we done this before? It seems to me if a thing that passed or failed, when we were looking for an override at town meeting ruled. This is the first
So
time.
we have to
I
monitor.
can, I can tell you that has happened. So in the past, we haven't done, in my memory, we haven't done a Prop 2.5 override. But what we have done is debt exclusion overrides. And in cases where those debt exclusion overrides failed at town meeting, we didn't bother having a special election to fund something that town meeting had already decided not to fund. So frankly, I assumed that that was going to be the case here. I guess I'm hearing something else, but that's policy, that's not my job. But it would be perfectly reasonable if the town voted down the expanded budget article. It would be perfectly reasonable not to have a special election, but if the select board chooses to have a special election, they get to make that choice, so.
At our cost, another $10,000.
Any other comments on the town clerk? Conservation Commission. So Conservation Commission and Planning Board both submitted 2 different budgets as requested. And what you're seeing here is the reduced option 2 budget for both of those. Any questions, comments on conservation or planning? Zoning board? That's there's an increase in there. I can't recall what the increase was for. That was shifting positions, I believe. Is that
Well,
Mary Ann?
that's, yeah. She works for my office, so we're trying to keep the hours down in my department, because last year she got the increase in hours. And when they increased her hours last year, it put us into that situation where we were paying overtime, or it
Yeah.
was over.
So it's
So,
reduced for your department, but increased over in the other department.
yeah, well, yeah, I don't know if she, I guess she needs more hours up there, but that's irrelevant to my office.
So,
So what she has for hours, and for planning and zoning, I can't tell you what her hours are there. I don't have any jurisdiction over that at all. That's up to her. I don't know what she needs for hours in that office, but if she says she needs more, then,
so the zoning board only meets when there's an appeal.
Okay.
So there could be 0, which has happened in many years. There could be 20. It's absolutely impossible for us to predict how many hours we would need Mary Ann to be writing up minutes and writing decisions. So crystal ball stuff.
Okay. Got it.
let's try to keep the regular hours under the 40 between.
Yeah. Thank you for the clarification. Any other comments on zoning? Town buildings. So town buildings, we're gonna see some movement here in numbers. A lot of the repair to the town buildings number, that's been something that's been on and off budgets frequently for the past several years. We used it actually in FY '23 to reduce the budget, to keep ourselves under the levy limit, with other cuts there. But there's repairs that are needed, not only to the Henry Woods building, but other buildings throughout. So there is a reduced number, but it is part of the override number, so that way the town's assets don't go into disrepair.
Just a comment that I'm kind of horrified that our brandy new public safety building needs so much already.
Where are you with
Public safety, $63,000.
Well, that's utilities, and so that's also the utilities for down in public safety, heating, air conditioning. That's all.
Yeah, the electricity last year, I think was like $38,000.
Yeah.
It was a lot, yeah. I think that's why the chief was looking for the solar panels to be done.
The repairs to buildings, although it hasn't been expended and it's been utilized, but we really need to do some repairs. We have roof problems here, the shingles off the roof. We have leaking at the town hall with mold in areas that we really do have to address, and it's been for more than a year now.
We'll take care of our buildings, we're not gonna have them.
Well, there's gonna cost more in the long run too.
Yep.
That's the downside, is you push it off, it doesn't get cheaper. Any questions or other comments on the town building lines? So you can see what the override amount would be as this number accumulates. That's where you're gonna have the 2 separate budgets at the end. Central purchasing, mostly level funded, but there was a wage and classification study added as part of the override only. So conversation that members of the finance committee have had, Mr. Delaconis, I know the select board is doing a study of wage and classifications for all of our non-unionized associates within town to ensure that everyone is being paid a prevailing wage that makes sense with their position and the surrounding communities. So that study there is put in as an override item. It is a need for the town and it is an ask, but we don't have obviously the funds to put it in a regular budget.
I got a question. Does the state or the federal government supply any of those statistics that, so you wouldn't have to do this study? I know that the federal government does pay for studies to be done for wages for different,
You'd have to
every
compile
job in the
data.
United States. I don't know if the state may, but if you could grab that information from the federal government versus doing a study for 21,000. You would know.
Part of the value of the study is to look at communities that are comparable to us.
Yep.
But also to look at job descriptions, which haven't been touched in years, and update that as part of the process. I know that the town did have a wage and classification study done more than 5 years ago,
Oh, yeah.
let's say. And I think it's a good idea to retain, to have one in there so that we can attract and retain the best employees we possibly can. It's possible, but we have more concrete data by going through something like this, and that's why it's.
And I do understand that, because you're gonna do comparable towns and things of that nature in municipalities. And then you're talking about rewriting the structure of the job for whatever it is. Will that have to go to a vote to restructure that, like through contract or whatever, when you're?
It remains to be seen, whether someone's job is updated that much that it has to be negotiated with the unions, I think is what your question is. I don't know. That's a question for our attorneys. But certainly, we need to update and make sure that we're in tune with what other communities are providing.
But part of my concern, I agree we definitely need a wage study, but part of my concern is using an override to fund the one-time use of money. We're gonna fund that for the rest of our lives. So we're gonna put in $21,000 into the budget forever for a one-time use of money. Is there another way to fund it?
You could fund it in the fall, presuming that you get free cash certification at some point, you could fund it from that.
The other thing I was gonna say, Maureen, we don't have an AFSCME bargaining unit in the town, but they have a Department of Washington that will actually do a wage study for free, but we don't have an AFSCME town bargaining unit.
Does the MMA have anything?
Generic stuff.
I didn't know.
The intent here is to be specific to Barre and what Barry's needs are. And, I fear that we're on the low side, which is why we experience turnover of our positions. And I think there's a price to pay for that.
Orange just had one like 2 years ago, Blackstone had one this year. You can look at other towns that are similar in size and kind of piece it together, but it's not the same. They would cater it to Barre.
To your point about it being a one-time thing, I mean, it's not really a one-time thing, right? It should be like an every 5 years thing.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe you guys wanna think about that more like you do your capital planning, where you set aside $5,000 every year going
Yeah.
forward. Doesn't help you right now.
Yeah.
But, so that you always have money ready to fund that
Yeah.
when it's time.
I have it like in a revolving account, it does make
That
sense,
would
it's a
make
good
more
point.
sense, because once you've done an override, our base is forever raised.
It is forever raised.
It is forever raised,
Yeah,
that's
but-
a fact.
You could always vote to undo the override. And good point, I was a little off topic here, but 11 years ago, our town's tax rate was over $18, right? So this shows that the 2.5% system's broken. Because as valuations have grown, our tax rates come down to $13.73. Like, it doesn't take the difference of inflation, right? That's why we're in the situation we're in, because we're always at that 2.5%. So we were paying much more 11 years ago of money out of our pockets per $1,000 at $18 and I think 70-something cents. Then we were paying $5 more per 1,000. But they were valued much less.
Yeah,
But if
I
this-
bet I didn't have a tax bill that looks like
If
what it
the
looks like
state
now.
allowed us to be more even keeled, we wouldn't be in the situation we are, right? If we were able to bring the valuations up and also reduce the tax rate, so it's not 2.5%, say it's 3% or 3.25%, we're stuck at the 2.5%. And it's kind of, we're in a situation many other communities are in because it's a semi-broken system. It's an outdated system that really needs to be revamped.
So what happens to 21,000 after it's spent in '26? It stays in the budget, it's gonna be an override in the budget.
It becomes part of our revenue, so
Right.
it could stay in the budget, right? And that 21,000 could be.
It's part of our capacity
It's
to
the
raise taxes.
exactly. It's the overall capacity. So if another position's needed, or we need to, out of the wage and classification study, we have to raise
Or if health
wages.
insurance comes in at another 19% increase.
We'll see at the end of the budget,
Don't give me nightmares.
some of our fixed costs are, on health insurance are kind of through the roof.
Well, I understand that, yeah.
That 21,000 does stay as capacity that is coming out of the revenue stream. A little off topic, but, central purchasing. Any other questions on that? All right, so here's a big one. This is, the police department. So the police department, has their level funded amount is slightly less than their current fiscal year. And the overall override amount to get them to where they need to be for their department requests is that $100,000. Give or take $1 or $2.
Yeah.
Lieutenant, do you want to speak a bit about the police?
Sure. I mean, I'm still trying to wrap my mind, around some of these numbers, just because it seems to be changing from moment to moment and without any notice. And it seems to be pretty exhausting trying to keep up with it. But the number that I have is a 10.9% decrease, which will significantly impact the budget from staffing. We're going to have to pull the SRO out of the school. They're not going to be in there. And then we're going to have to drop down to single-man shifts, or single officer shifts, excuse me. And that's going to create quite the instability, in my opinion, for the community and also for the department members. Because that's going to require them to be going to calls potentially by themselves or with an extended wait time for those calls.
Lieutenant, could you speak specifically to, I thought you guys were dying on the hill about sending an individual out to,
We can only live with what we're given here.
Well, I'm just
What
saying.
else do you do?
well, I'm just saying, would you do that, or would you not have a shift for a particular time of day?
I mean, that could be a possibility. I needed emergency services at my house on the overnight, and I have come to appreciate that and expect that kind of service. When I need an emergency service and I call for it, I want it there. I've had it at my house with my 5 children, and that's what I expect in the place that I live. That's what I would want. That's going to significantly
Can you tell me
impact
how this budget would be modified in order to provide what we would describe as level services? In other words, we would have the officers that we currently have working through
No, that's what's
the shifts.
That would probably come with the original request.
Well, he can,
Right now, we have 10 full-time officers, and we have one part-time. We're asking, I believe we've been asked to do away with the 11th full-time officer, which would be the school resource officer, the one that's in there Monday through Friday. With that coming out, that can no longer be accommodated.
So Maureen, I've been hearing from you for 4 or 5 months that you were going to talk to the school department about funding the school resource officer. Has that happened yet?
I have had conversations with the superintendent about that, and they're in a situation where they're not prepared to be able to do that, since the conversations that they've always had, not only with this chief, but previous chiefs, is that the department itself wants to hire, fire, and manage that person. And that means pull them out of the school when they feel there's a need, and the superintendent says, no, you shouldn't get to pull him out of my school. We're gonna pay for him, he's gonna be our employee. And I know that that's an issue. It has been an issue with at least the previous chief and potentially this one. about if that person is in there and their responsibility is, quite frankly, a police function, I don't want if I were them, I don't want the superintendent managing that person either. So I think that the situation would have to be that if the district or if the 5 towns were going to kick in, as they should, the concern that I have is because we are the host community of the Quabbin Regional School District, it's good and that's bad for the town, right? It's the traffic, it's the aggravation, it's et cetera. That being said, we know that if I were, the fire department, I'd say, how come we can't have an extra fireman? Because man, if that school goes, we're first online. So there becomes this thing, it's the host community, you want the district to pay for your fire, and they want the district to pay for your police, and you want the district, and that just doesn't fly. And it's not a thing that the State Department of Education thinks that's host communities, has the responsibility. And the host community was chosen in 1960, whatever it was, because they wanted it in the geographic center. They wanted that school in the geographic center. So that's who got it. We got it, and we protect it, and it is never a problem if our chief of police or fire department says mutual aid, there is never a time when that Hubbardston or Hardwick or New Braintree aren't there in a spot. Whether or not there could be a better shared thing, and some additional revenues from the school, that is something that would have to be negotiated with the school committee.
I would just add, with the SRO being in the school, there are a number of types of investigations that happen inside the school. That a mutual aid agency isn't just gonna come and do, because it requires lots and lots of follow-up. Along with many of the investigations that we do, and the ones that are more sensitive take a lot of time, a lot of resources. It's not just a Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, 9 to 5. They're coming in constantly to do things. And with investigations that can't go not being investigated. And a mutual aid agency isn't just going to do that. They're not going to foot the bill, to go do those things. And I would just say, I would love for that to be a hill for me to die on, to go with a 2-man minimum. That doesn't. I've been on single officer calls. I've been rolling around with people in the middle of 122 on the overnight by myself, waiting for backup. That's something that I don't want to do, and I don't want the officers, to be doing, because backup. We have 3 towns that touch us that go with nobody on midnight shifts. That's something that we've said has been unacceptable to go with a single man shift. But we have to go with what we're given. If that's what the town wants, then that's what the town wants. But I would say that will create a huge instability in the department, morale, because they're going to see the direction this thing's going. And it would make me as a citizen uncomfortable. It makes me as administration and management uncomfortable. And that's something I don't want to see on top of other things like the special events. That's wiped out. That's gone. The Memorial Day parades, those things are gone. The helping other agencies or other departments do these we do student academies, we've done citizen academies, which have been a great success. People love them. We have people lined up at the door to try and get in the student one. That's going to be gone. We have the Memorial Day, the Christmas parade, you have Halloween events, you have all these events that we tried to budget for that are gone. That will be gone. Those things will be gone. The training's been cut significantly. You don't want to send, we've worked extremely hard, especially with what we've been given, whether it's from the state, with the mandates, with the required training, those things only increase. And now we're asking to cut the training budget and not train officers to a certain extent. Though they'll have required in-service trainings that they'll be able to do. The specialty trainings that they're going to go without, that would benefit this community in an immense way, are going to be not available, not able to accommodate those things. Same thing, we're going without a cruiser. We're hoping the cruiser maintenance line, the amount of the cruiser maintenance goes down, because maybe we have the town mechanic and seems to be working out well. But, I mean, I don't know where else to go with that. I hope I explained myself, like, but there's any
Yeah.
You
question.
did very well.
Thank you for your comments,
Yes.
Lieutenant, appreciate it.
Just because, I mean, you definitely should not be going out singly. Do we need 10 full-time officers because of the shift coverage? Why do we need that many?
Because you have three shifts. You have the day shift, you have 3 to 11, you have the overnight.
Right, I
And
get that.
you have sick days, you have sick days, you have
You have
vacation
sick-
days, and you have $90,000 of overtime just to cover all of
So-
To
this.
cover those things, and that's not including
Exactly.
turnover.
Right.
Because we are not even close to the highest paid community around us, it's very difficult, like we've been talking about the town administrator's position, to keep those positions, to keep those people. Because they can go next door and make significantly amount more money, you know? And, so in order to fund their time off, I mean, it doesn't even account for if we lose somebody, because if we lose somebody, you don't know what to do, because the environment is so incredibly difficult to attract people. So, I mean, and then they have certain shifts, right? They're on 4 and 2 schedule. So they work 4 days on, 2 days off, so their days always rotate. And just trying to accommodate those things. Yeah, I mean, you have the chief and I, we go on calls all the time. We're involved with arrests, incidents, accidents. You know, we're
Right, that's
on
never
top
why-
of the administrative duties and responsibilities that we have.
Yeah.
Lieutenant,
No,
closest,
yeah.
closest barracks for you is Brookfield, they service that area?
Brookfield, they service our
About a
area.
half an hour to get a copy in the middle of the night?
And trust me that this
Minimum.
place, the town of Barre, is not where they want to be.
So do they know the roads?
Right,
When we say 10 officers, is that including the chief and the
yes,
lieutenant?
yeah.
Yeah, that's all in.
And excuse me, I forgot to mention the part-time, that'll be wiped out. So we have one part-time officer, picks up a couple shifts a month. He's trained, he's full-time certified, but that'll be,
So are you saying that the budget that was submitted, the $100,143,379, would
yep,
pro-
that's it, the 1,043,000,
would provide you with what you need?
no.
Yes, no?
No, that's what, I believe that's what I explained, right? That the 1 million, the budget that I have in front of me is a 10.9% decrease. It's 1,043,379.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
Yep.
is the $1,143,379 the budget that would provide you with level services?
I believe that's the correct one, yes.
Okay.
That's the budget that provides level services minus a new cruiser
Right,
for this fiscal
yes.
year.
Okay, which, yeah.
So
And
the
that
cruiser
was
would have been another $70,000
Right.
that was pulled out of the budget.
And I'm just questioning the number of cruisers that we have.
Mhm.
We really need that
The
many?
towns around us that are smaller than us have more cruises than we have.
But do
we have-
we need it? I don't care about.
Yes,
my-
well, sure, so like
That's-
if you want safety on the roadways during with traffic details, you need blue lights. I mean, if you haven't noticed what's going on 122, you need a cruiser on both ends, which means cars are idling 8 to 10 hours that shift, and then are getting used on a second and potentially a third shift after that. So the idle hours are immense on all the cruisers, regardless of the amount of miles that are on them. And some of them are at 100,000 miles, and should be turned over, but they're not going to be.
Yeah, no, and I get that the use, and we have to have so much a year to replace.
Yeah, yeah.
But my question, but we really, I mean, how, we have so, it seems we have so many
No,
cruisers.
but,
It's such
You-
a
I
small
mean,
town.
If you look
But
around,
it's-
it's very
it's-
comparable to
it's-
everybody else.
I think we have, 6 and plus a chief?
Yeah, there's six line cars and then 2 that are provided by the,
So we need to
by the
turn it
Army
around.
Corps.
The Army Corps of Engineers. So
yeah, the chief.
what they do is they
Chief
cycle
was
out the 6th oldest, so if the vehicle
Right,
gets 6
no,
years
no,
old.
I get
yeah.
that, and I get the need
125.
to do that and to plan for it. Hey, I run a house, I
Isn't all
know.
that
Yeah.
extra
But
25?
Well, we're not-
my
this
question was
budget's
just
not
for the
going to
number
that.
of them, we,
But you've
This-
got
this-
15
this-
officers.
Yeah,
yeah, but
Sorry,
they're not
yeah,
all working at the same
10
time.
officers.
I'm sorry.
We've
no.
got
Yeah.
10, but they're on a shift, you
Yeah.
you don't
if you want
have
to go
all
level
10.
services, yeah.
So my
Right.
question is, because of the number of officers you have on any given shift, do we need the number of cruisers that we have?
I would say yes, because we have 2 guys
Because of the
on,
traffic,
because of the shifts that they're on, they're working doubles, they're assigned a cruiser. There's usually 2 people try to assign to a cruiser. It doesn't always work out depending on what car's down, what car's having issues, and they have issues, especially when you're not, now that we're gonna be going without one, you know, for a period of time, it's gonna make it more difficult, hopefully not. But they run constantly. There's several details during the day here, there's 5 guys a day, and a lot of them are in difficult spots. That you don't want a personal car in, that's all.
No, and don't get me wrong, I love our
Yeah,
police,
no,
you know.
I'm just trying
just
to
questioning
explain.
what we
You have to
need.
call in people for a major incident, you need the cars too.
Yeah, right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't wanna drive you nuts. The TA recommendation, what's that actually mean?
That's the town administrator
That's the
recommendation.
recommendation.
Yeah.
So the town administrator recommended that they go with $1,143,379, which would be what was requested by the department, correct?
Correct. I mean, I think the finance committee would also, I think we had that recommendation as well.
All right.
But
So
it's not within the balance
if
budget.
these overrides get passed, is that a guaranteed money going to the department?
Yes, because it's specific to the line,
Yes.
right? So you see how we have
Cruiser too.
the override
Next year,
number?
it's gonna go up by a cruiser on top of that.
Yeah, well,
Right.
If we got a cruiser too.
Now, I'm gonna have one more question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it goes to the finance committee or to the police department. But when you're working in detail because of tree cutting or say construction in the road, right? The town gets reimbursed for this maybe.
That
goes
comes
to
through
you guys,
revenue.
Right, that comes in as revenue
Yeah.
from the contractor or whatever.
Mhm.
Do they take into consideration the use of the cruiser at the same time?
Yes.
All right, so that's all reimbursed at $1 for $1.
Yeah, that's a
It's a
rate.
certain percentage amount
Yeah.
for each detail gets billed to the company.
That comes in on the revenues, but it's relatively small compared to,
Right, so it's a percentage, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanna say it's 10, but I can't give it up.
Right, no, so I mean, if you,
10% per detail. 10% of the detail is the admin fee.
This is.
why are we not billing the contractor?
So they're
full
paying
price?
for the detail officer,
they,
Oh, okay.
right, and then they're giving us 10%, they're
Oh,
giving
Over and
10% on
above,
top of
okay,
that.
sorry,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Here's the
Right,
contract.
I hope I answered that correctly.
all right, let's,
Thank you very much.
we're gonna get back on track here.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you for your comments, Lieutenant, appreciate it. And summarize, obviously, a reduction to the police department would be a difficult situation. Fire department. So fire department, we have Chief James here. You wanna walk us through, sir?
Yep, so, what the proposed budget without the reduction would have been 354, and then reducing to 287,612. That's taking away one of our positions, that's the title is fire inspector, which people sometimes get hung up on, is that's all they do. But, that position, which I was in before, this position responded to the most calls in the last 5 years, and that's during the day. So during the day, we have the most calls. During the day, during the middle of the week, it goes up around noonish is the highest, usually the average. So that position also backfills for overtime, so we don't have to hire. We have 6 people, so we basically staff on per diems with 1 full-timer, so or 2 full-timers. So that one position, like if someone goes out and we can't get them in, we can usually get, like, we'll just use that position to fill the spot, because we need 2 people for the ambulance. We can't do any calls without 2 people. You really, according to NFPA, should have 3 people on the fire engine to respond. And so when the chief's there, it's 4. So then if we have any second calls, the chief and that position respond on second calls. I think you can actually see a trend. I think we're gonna make less revenue this year for EMS billing, because the chief was, the former chief was deployed for a year, and we had a really hard time backfilling that extra position, not extra position, that position. And then he became part-time after he resigned, and the same thing. So we had a really hard time staffing all those second calls. And when I say second calls, I think we had 130-something second calls last year.
where we had to call mutual aid and to come and staff our ambulance calls. And mutual aid is not close. It's, I want to say they'll do an average of 15 minutes away. So I've done CPR on somebody for 15 minutes, and it's not a fun time. I know Joe's done it. You're waiting and waiting and waiting. You're hoping that the closest ambulance is available. On top of that, they do all the inspections. There was like 380 something inspections last year. All the permitting, that position also does plan review for new houses, additions, buildings, and all sorts of things. Solar plan review, that's a big thing now. We have to inspect every solar array put up, all the ESS systems. So losing that position is gonna.
Well, we have that on the override, so
Yeah.
that,
Yeah, so we would probably not make as much and not be able to supplement our budget well as we've been doing.
It was down to level of care too when you have a delay, because the only two people on duty are with the first ambulance call. You have a second call, and you have to wait in mutual aid. Level of care for our citizens in town was way down.
Yeah, it drops.
Way down, because you're waiting 15, 20 minutes for that mutual aid ambulance to come while someone's laying on the floor, having a stroke, a heart attack, or what have you. So it's very, very important, and we have to maintain our ALS ambulance. If we lose our license, we will never have an ambulance in the town of Barre again, and that's state
explain what ALS is, because
advanced
it's,
life support.
That's the paramedics.
And once you go to that level of care, you have to maintain that ALS paramedic level 24/7. And if we don't do it, if we can't do it, if we lose our license, you will not have an ambulance in this town. You'll have to privatize and get a private company. It's very, very important. We decided to go to that level many years ago with the Bears, and then carried over to the fire department. It's a great thing for our community. It's worked well, but we definitely can't go backwards on that. Patient care is paramount. We need to take care of our people in this town.
And we're busy. We did 1,654 calls last year. We were technically under Rutland, whose population is bigger than us, but we were under, if you take the amount of times they responded to Barre for those EMS calls, we would either be on par or they would be actually below us for the amount of calls. There's a lot of people that use our service in this town.
Well, the health center too. A lot of people go there and then the doctor ships them off to the hospital. So then our ambulance service has to go down and take that patient to the hospital. So we generate a lot of calls out of the health center.
A couple months back, somebody was gonna go talk to them about staffing ambulance just for them. Did anything ever come
yeah,
of that?
I did have a conversation with some higher-ups there, and they smiled and said that they would take it under advisement and get back to us.
What kills me is they have their own ambulance service in Worcester, like that's.
Well,
for Worcester.
they
You
for
could send one
Worcester,
here and
for
get
Worcester.
their own.
They want to pick up somebody who's in Worcester
Yeah.
and bring them to UMass or Memorial.
Yeah.
One more question.
Yes.
I've seen, in Fitchburg one time, I took my mother to her doctor, and there was someone with a heart condition, and they, she called in, this is Dr. So-and-so, we have a patient here that needs the ambulance to get to the hospital. And I don't know if it's a state rule, federal rule, or just if it was there, but even though they knew it was just the ambulance needed, they still had to send a fire truck, which is a big expense. Do we have to do that?
So we don't send the fire truck, but we, during the day, that fire inspector position,
Yeah.
well, you'll probably see a flag car follow it or that excavation.
Right, the car, but not the expense of running
so-
a fire truck. I mean, doesn't
so-
that cost a lot?
The thing with that is, I think Auburn did a study in 2000s, and it's about the speed of a call. So like, they just send that to speed the call up. So like an average call, ALS heart condition, I think in the study was 15 minutes on scene. You add a third person, I think it's like 7 minutes, and then you add a fourth person on that crew, it brings it down to like 5. So you can get people out the door super quick. So it's all about patient care and getting them to the hospital. Not as important to get someone out the door quick in Fitchburg, but they have the crews there. But out here, like if we have that extra person can get them going, I mean, it's like 30, 35 minutes to UMass. It's a
Yeah,
long
well,
way.
I know. It just seemed foolish to me that they wanted an ambulance. They wanted the EMT to take this person, and they knew it wasn't like you need a fire truck and jaws of life or anything. They just needed the ambulance, but they had the added expense now of a fire
Yeah,
truck.
a lot of the
needing
bigger
as well.
cities send, they call them first responders. they'll send a fire engine, a ladder truck, to all the medicals.
Well, some of it's about extrication, you know, on 3 and 4 decker, you gotta carry that patient from the 4th floor down multiple flights of
Yeah.
stairs and
No,
get them
that-
into the
that I-
ambulance, so
that
that's
I
where the extra
understand,
help comes in.
But, I mean, aren't you allowed to use your, you know, common sense? I mean, if somebody's, the doctor's there taking care of this guy, but I want him to go right to the hospital, he can't go home.
But you don't know the size of the patient too, like, and so once we show up, they're not supposed to walk.
Yeah,
So we have
so
to carry them to the stretcher, so.
Carrying me,
People get-
Cheryl, and carrying you are like 2 different
Yeah,
carriers.
people are getting
Yes.
bigger and bigger in this
Yes.
country.
Yes.
No, but.
Okay, no, I just
Yeah.
wondered about that, if it's just something that has to be, that you have to have a fire truck when you have an ambulance?
Plus, they don't take the call,
They
Rutland
don't.
takes the call, so
Yeah,
like,
yes, the dispatcher,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's out of your hands.
We don't send them
And
that.
a lot of the time when they tell us what we're going to
We
do,
don't
it's
send-
not even close to what
On a
we're
regular
going to do.
medical, no.
I think you-
Okay,
you-
thank you,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I just, it just,
Yeah, we're gonna
it
do
seems
it. No,
crazy.
It's just,
No,
you never
regular
know. You
ambulance
don't know if you need a
I think you'll
medical
note
extra.
that $67,000
Thank you.
for the position that he's discussing for the fire inspector, which also works on the ambulance, is in the override. And we think a critical piece of,
that was an important piece that he said, that
Yeah.
our billables are gonna be less next year.
Right.
We won't see it this year,
Yep.
because we're gonna deal with it next year.
Oh, billable, patient care as
Yeah.
well, you know.
Right.
It's an insurance policy, you hope to never need it, but you want it there when it's
Correct.
needed.
In regards to the fire, there was a meeting earlier when there was, we found out there was a accounts receivable for those folks whose insurance did not pay, or have we resolved, have we figured out how we're gonna handle,
That'd be
first of all, the existing accounts receivable and the accounts receivable going forward?
Well, I think that's a perpetual situation with insurance and Medicare, and I don't think that'll ever fully be resolved. I mean, I'm sure Jake
we're
or.
working on it though,
Yeah, we're,
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah.
We'll be meeting with the
collection agency soon.
yeah, billing company.
Yeah.
company.
But it's just, we get like, what, 10% back after it goes to third-party collection?
Yeah, it's not,
I mean, right now, it's over $600,000.
No, I think it was only 465,000 that we are, that we
Percentage-wise,
have
that isn't
unpaid
that
bills.
great.
After you pay out the collection agency, it's,
There's some corrective action we're working on.
because they bundle it up and sell it off.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief, for your comments and everyone else on the fire department. Any other comments there? Ambulance services,
So as you can see, it went up. That's, the union was negotiating with the town, and they agreed tentatively on a new contract. So that's reflective of the new contract.
yeah. And that, there was a shift at the last finance committee meeting that shifted some of the funds from that position. The select board wanted to
Right, to the
cover
fire
that
department.
contract for the fire department, the ambulance services, my mistake, to cover that increase. So that's why we don't really see an override there on the ambulance line.
And just a question, where it's, fire chief salary, is that for the chief helping with EMT calls?
Now, that line should be eliminated. So you can see that line was in there
Yeah,
for,
I don't,
because
I just wondered what the heck that was.
the fire chief's now paid out of one account. It used to
It
be,
used to be a whole,
it used to be
Okay, so
paid
it's
out of
just
3
one.
accounts,
Okay.
yeah,
I
3
wondered.
emergency management.
ambulance and fire. So it's just paid out of one account now for the chief. Any other questions on the ambulance services? Building department. So building department, that, and the regional building program, you see a reduction there. That's because we're no longer in the regional program, is that correct?
Correct.
So there were some operational savings to the town on the budget due to some changes there. And you'll see that in those. And we also have some reduction for the emergency management. That was reduced down. That's, I know Chief Rogoski presented that. Is that because some of those services are bundled into
Somewhere else?
the fire services?
Yeah, I believe that's what it's. kind of bundled in together.
And
Yeah. Okay.
historically, before Chief Rogowski, the EMD director was a private citizen.
Okay.
It's evolved under the fire chief's role now, and that's typical for communities now, is the EMD is the fire chief.
Yep.
But that's why we always had a separate line item, because it was a resident for many, many years in the town.
Okay. That makes sense.
Tommy Graves? Tommy Graves was a resident.
Any other questions or comments on the building or EMS? Animal control. So we did see a reduction in animal control. What was that? Because there's a new, is there a new animal control officer or a different contract? We never really got an answer on that. We asked.
We have a regional,
It's a regional animal control, so it's our portion.
I think they took on another town.
Is that what it is? That's what it is. They took on another town. So it reduced, it's good when they take on another town because it reduces our overall cost. It may impact our services, but who knows? Regional dispatch. So regional dispatch, that is up. Good news is over the years, that number should come down. High level, regional dispatch moved from the regional model to a district model. Every town has a vote, and they're trying to get more towns on. The more towns that join, it'll drive the cost down for the towns that are on there.
How
Wow.
many towns run it now?
5?
Is that theoretically that it'll go down, or is that a definite that it'll go down?
Well, it's always a theory.
Because
yeah.
we've always had a story.
Well, so, and operating expenses should go down, right?
But they're moving to Auburn, and they changed their name to like East Central
Yeah.
Mass. And the pitch was a grant will pay for the whole building in Auburn, but
The 911 grant, actually, I mean, they put on a pretty good presentation that.
I mean, and the
we
state
went
was
to.
actually there,
Yeah.
you know,
The
we didn't fund the grant,
Yeah.
so they were, you know, they were even more out and saying, yeah, it's not a problem, we're really trying to do this is our real, you know, effort to try to regionalize these services. So, for what that's worth, I guess.
It's kind of the way of the system these days.
Finish your thought.
Yeah.
Kind of the way of the,
It's just the way the systems go these days. Everything's going to regionalization.
it's good, it saves us money in the long run, right? Hopefully.
If you're looking at only the dollars.
So with the regional dispatch, you're expecting an increase or trying to filter in an increase of 14,549 for this year coming up, right?
Yeah.
But you're expecting it to drop after that. But if we do the override, and I'm not opposed to overrides to fund departments that actually need money to operate.
Yeah.
But when you're building in a $14,500 and something increase,
oh, that's not.
That's a fixed
Yeah.
cost.
No,
that's okay, that's a fixed cost, but you're expecting it to go down, you said.
Well, it could go down
It
in the
could.
future fiscal years.
But we're putting it all into the end of the budget and say, okay, to make this budget work, this is what we need, and that's built in for future years. So if a department ends up needing less money, finance committee's not gonna come back to the town populace and say, okay, let's vote money out of the budget.
Well, the finance committee just makes recommendations.
Well,
It's
right,
the
you
town.
make recommendations, but it's
Yeah.
not gonna come out and say, okay, because we're gonna end up with a surplus at some point in time, hopefully.
Well,
Right, if it costs less money to operate
That's up to-
something.
If we get to a surplus,
That's
you
up
know,
to
I
us.
mean,
If
I'll-
we get to a surplus, what happens?
Yeah.
Because you've already voted in a 2.5 override.
Yeah, you could reduce the tax rate, yeah. But that's not an override item, just so you
Oh, I
know.
understand it, but everything that's got a plus to it, that doesn't have a parentheses around it.
Yeah,
Is an increase. Yes?
correct.
And the ones with parentheses are
Yeah.
a deduction.
But that's, so
But
we're
you're
in a,
looking for the override.
we're in a contract though, so that's a fixed cost to the town. We can't change that number.
All right, but I thought you were just saying that you're thinking of going to a district versus a region.
That's what's
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
And
We already did.
you're talking about down the road. It's a very complex process, and we're probably not gonna get through and have a big discussion on that process today. There's been public hearings on that. And down the road, 2-3 fiscal years from now, when that regional dispatch, that's a district model, brings on other towns,
Yep.
as they bring on more towns,
It
the
gets
cost
cheaper
for each town,
per
yeah.
town.
Yeah.
I get that. Well, I guess one of the things that sticks on me is the 21,000 for the study, right?
Yeah.
That's built in but we're not doing a study every year, but it's also built into the override budget itself. So you're gonna put that towards surplus funds, or is it gonna just be a slush fund that you can throw around and nobody knows where it goes later? And I'm not questioning it. You
Yeah.
know, I'm trying to say that we're building in 21,000 because we've got overrides, and that 21K goes to all the overrides they're gonna get voted on as a budget.
Correct.
Well, let me ask
You're
you a
not
question.
voting per department, police department, fire department.
No, it has, because it has to be one budget. It's gotta be a number that's consistent. So I understand where I understand where you're
Because
going.
once it's voted in, that 21 stays in the coffer,
The
right?
21 does, but that 21 does also prevent us being in the same room next year, asking for another 2.5.
Right, so we're looking for an increase to be able to stay sustainable, whether it's
Yeah, right
whether
now.
it's to have the surplus, you know, you want the 15, then the year after, we're gonna have the 21 added to that, so then you're gonna end up with you know, what, 36 versus a surplus of 15, which is good for the town because it needs extra money at some point in time, whether it be for plowing or tree services or whatever you fall short on. Right, but it's gotta be brought to the attention that, you know, this is gonna be in the budget forever, and it's not just, you know, I wanna make sure every, you know, that it's, yeah, we vote on it, it's 21,000 for the study, great, but that's 21 stays there.
Yeah, no,
I think the moderator made a good
Lowered after a
suggestion on
year?
that.
yeah.
Excuse me?
Like, could an override be lowered after a year? So any one-time items could be reduced?
It requires a ballot vote.
You wouldn't need to. The town is not compelled
Oh, okay.
to spend any money at all. So all you have to do is bring to town meeting next year a budget that spends $21,000 less, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
It's really hard when you're looking at all this money in your bank account not to spend it all, but you don't have to.
Correct.
And you can also take some of that money
Plan for a rainy day.
and put it in stabilization.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is,
Which we're taking money out of,
Yes.
we are taking money out of stabilization to balance the budget.
and improving your stabilization status will actually save you money in the long run because your bonds will get cheaper.
Correct.
So,
Ellen?
I guess a question. So for the regional dispatch, have we ever looked in, I know that you had talked about the regional school resource officer. Is that something that maybe could go through the regional dispatch for all of the regional towns and make it an employee of the dispatch center instead of the school or the police department, and divvy it up between the towns that were within that district to help reduce our costs for everyone?
I don't,
But
I
it's
don't know
not
that.
like,
Is that thought?
they don't mirror the school.
I don't think, because they
So like
don't,
Warren's in our
employ
regional
officers.
district, it's like random towns, it's not the 5
Yeah.
I
towns
just
that
don't know
are
if
in the
that's
school
something that we
district.
could
Yeah.
discuss, or maybe they could create a position, or maybe we need, maybe legislation or something that would allow for that. I just thought maybe that would help.
definitely something to think about. I don't think it's gonna help us right now.
Yeah.
in the
I
situation
think one
we're
thing
in.
that people
I'm just thinking-
probably don't appreciate is that the school resource officer is at school, hopefully, all the time when the kids are there. Their objective is to build relationships with kids, and so that they will hear stuff that could stop some crazy kids from doing some stupid things because they heard it through the grapevine. That they build a kind of rapport that the kids will go to them and say, hey, I saw Johnny and he had something weird in his duffel bag. Can you take care of it? And because kids will do that when they have a relationship. So if it's just any person, any day, it's not the same as somebody that they have built a relationship with.
I will make just a comment on what you just got to say, I don't remember the rules, I'm sorry. But the resource officers are invaluable in the schools. I've got 2 grandchildren that are still at Quabbin. They deal with an awful lot of stuff every day, and they have to deal with kids acting out, and they have lockdowns, and they, shelter in place and everything else. And the officers that are at the schools, they do build trust with the students, and it's a good community thing. And even though it's a regional high school, right, and junior high, they get to know the officers and they trust them. So when there is a problem, they don't feel alienated, and they're able to go to them, and maybe in confidence, and tell them something that may be going on. And I'm sure you've run into it.
Oh, no, I agree, we could spend hours on that, you know,
Yeah,
like-
it's positions that you don't want.
Yeah, absolutely, and I appreciate the comments. So we're gonna continue on with the review of the budget here. So, tree warden, that's the same level funded, $5,000. We obviously warden the trees, and, any other questions on that? It's been a flat rate for many, I've been with 6, 7 years, I think it's been a flat rate for years on.
I heard that still position is held by the former highway department person.
That's an annual appointment that may or may not be the same.
Okay, that's appointed by the select board, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Because I think the highway department guy here, that's in that position now, should be in that spot. Not somebody that's not even working in the town.
I think it's very
It's a
good
great
suggestion.
Yeah,
recommendation.
it's something we'll be
It's,
dealing with soon.
Doesn't fall under the purview of this meeting today, but I think it's a great recommendation. Schools, so this is always, I don't think anyone from the schools are here. Dave's here.
I'm here for the library, but I'll speak to the schools.
Just one quick, what is Quabbin Regional Debt Service? What is that? I just don't know what that is.
I'm not part of the budget subcommittee, but I think it would be for the debt service for the HVAC
The
chiller
chiller.
on the high school roof.
Which is a very short-term note.
Yeah, it's a
It
short-term
should be
note.
paid off within, I think, 3 to 4 years.
Yeah,
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's what that is.
that was approved at town meeting, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
All I've got to say is that we, in May, the school committee approved the final budget that's being processed through all 5 towns. It was a 2.9% increase overall. They did everything they could to cut without cutting programs for kids, down to even cutting uniforms for certain sports teams. It got that tricky. So this is where we're at. I know the formula from the state. Once the assessment to the towns is different than the 2.9%, but that's another problem. The school did the best it could to lower the budget as far as it could and still maintain programs for the kids.
I think it's important to understand that the 2.9% increase in the budget, okay, is not the same as the increases you'll see in assessments.
That's
Because the revenues that come from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts under Chapter 70 have not expanded at all, not 2.5% a year, but they have stayed relatively flat for 16 years. They are predicated on an outdated formula that the state is ready to spend some time working on. You will see that this situation in Quabbin is repeated within 234 other school districts across the Commonwealth who have declining enrollments and who have not received any kind of additional aid in Chapter 70. And when that happens, it's pushed across the table to the communities. And the communities, I mean, you're looking at that assessment and you have to be saying, wow, we cannot do that every year. You cannot. You can see the same thing exists in Monty Tech with an 11% increase in your assessment at Monty Tech.
We get more students though, Monty Tech.
See, I love when vocational schools come in and they say, okay, well, they'll ask, the assembly will be asked, how come our assessments went up? Okay, 11%. And they'll say, well, you have more students. Drill it down and we have 2 additional students. And it went up 11%. Their budget also went up approximately 2.5–3% as well.
It's a good opportunity for me to kind of make a point. So the total increase in all of our school budgets is $375,508. See that number in the bottom right-hand corner?
Yep.
So the total amount of new revenue the town has for everything is $347,000. That's why we're here, and that's why we have an override.
Add to that also health insurance.
County retirement,
County retirement's up, what, 18–19%?
Yeah.
I mean, we
That's
have,
why we're here.
yeah, that's why we're here.
We've patched holes in our budgets the past 3 years with ARPA money, and we've used it for daily operational items that we should have been using for infrastructure. the last 2 police cruisers, last ambulance, you know, $200,000 for a park, $76,000 for another park.
Well, understand, we have matching, we have $100,000 in ARPA for the park, and we've got a grant for a little over $100,000.
No, it was 200,000.
But you can't use ARPA for operational budget.
An additional 100,000 for a total of 300. Are you saying now the park will be purchased for 200,000?
Well, the state is giving us, okay? an
100,000.
additional 100,000.
Yeah. And we put up 200.
Well, we put up, you have to put up the money in order to pay the bills before the state will reimburse you.
I thought we were spending 300.
I wish we could, because we'd do Rice Park too.
But our ARPA was also restricted. You can't use ARPA for operational budgets. Right? You can only capital expenditures.
I think we had some gray areas.
Well, I think that as ARPA went on, the course of the time that it was available to communities, which was 3 or 4 years, they basically started to say, we don't care what you spend. I hate to say it, but that's kind of what happened.
So do we have to return $100,000?
Yeah. Any other questions on the schools? Comments?
How much say do we actually have in the school budget?
Not much.
So theoretically, next year, they could come back to us and say, we want, or we need $400,000 from Barre, because the school budget has increased $400,000.
That's probably what they're gonna say.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at another 2.5 override next year.
Potentially.
Well, we're already $585,000 in the hole this year, correct?
More probably.
And
if you want to add some.
I believe we owe $100,000 to the fire department for borrowing $100,000.
No, well, that comes out of the ambulance. We'll just take out less.
All right, I thought that when they did that, it had to be repaid or transferred back to them in the new budget.
I don't see it.
I think we just, because we usually take the ambulance receipts, so we just take out $100,000 less at the end of the cycle. Then we
No, I'm just,
Right.
I mean, it just boggles my mind, $375,000, and we don't have much say over it. And then next year, it's probably gonna happen again, so we'll be looking at possibly another 2.5 override, because we're gonna be in the same predicament next year. There's gonna be raises that have to be paid through contracts, et cetera. So we'll be looking at it again.
Potentially.
So you're saying that we cannot annually, we cannot afford, we cannot have a budget that's not an override going
No,
forward?
I'm not saying, I'm not saying that. I
No,
mean, I
no,
can't
one
predict
one
the
is,
future.
based on our conversation. Based on
My
our
focus is on the
conversation.
FY '26 budget right now.
Excuse me?
I can only talk about the FY '26
Right,
budget.
but based on our conversation, because I remember last year, we had a debt exclusion. There was a reason we had debt exclusion.
Yep.
And now we're having an override, and there's no, theoretically, we get overrides ad infinitum.
No, that's the reason it's a process there, right? Because, and we're not unique to the situation. It's happening in communities all around us right now.
Hold on, when you say all around us, I printed the list. That's not the case. Around us, we'll talk about Orange where it failed. We'll talk about Spencer where it failed. 2 of them failed in Spencer. Winchendon, 1 did pass, and then Belchertown. That's it around us. It's not like every town touching us did an override.
Rutland just did an override 2 years ago.
Right. We're talking,
Right? It's like,
we
when
can
you talk
spend within
about,
our budget.
when's the last time the town of Barry's done an override?
And almost all of those towns have had successful overrides in the last decade, in some cases like Orange, more than one. This one may have failed, but Orange has had multiple overrides in the last decade. I know, my mother was its town
I'm well
administrator.
aware who your mother was. Well aware who your mother was.
And just, yeah, with the school department, I just hate that everybody always looks at cutting the services to the kids, but they don't, I feel the administration is so heavy. It's, how many administrators do we need? You know, we need the Indians, not the chiefs. You know, we need.
How many administrators do you think there are?
There are 3 of us.
Just curious. How many do you think there are?
I don't have an idea, but I know, we built a
into
building
the
for them
next
for
page.
crying out
Well,
loud.
actually, school choice wrote most of that, but,
Yeah.
okay. I'm gonna give you, see, people really don't know, I would really encourage the superintendent to show up here and really walk it through for you, because.
She didn't walk it through for us, we're the finance committee. That was the worst budget presentation I've ever seen before.
Well, thank you, but it wasn't mine
No,
presentation, but I'm
you
just
did more
saying.
than talking than she did.
Well, hey, that's my
How
I'm
many
fault.
just being honest.
We're not looking to do personal jabs here, let's keep the, on the budget,
For Quabbin,
please.
Quabbin Regional, right?
Excuse me?
We're budgeting $7,100 and something. Correct?
Oh, someone's talking.
And we get students from all the surrounding towns. Those towns get retiring as reimbursement.
Yes.
Good.
So, I mean, I don't know that a lot of people know that. Because, yeah, on top of it, it looks like, okay, we're spending $7,100,000
Per thousand.
Yeah.
But we're getting reimbursed from the towns for all of the students from those towns that go to our school, which brings that $7 million cost down. That's what people say, $1 million on students, you know, it's a regional. So.
Yeah,
everybody
I have this.
gets that.
You do?
Yeah, not on me, but,
School budget discussion.
yeah, the overall budget, yeah, we have.
Yeah, I didn't know if,
Yeah.
nobody else seemed to have it.
Yeah. I can tell.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought.
Do they all want to like?
All right, we're gonna get back on track here. Listen up. We're gonna get back on track here. I know. We have to. We're gonna need the gavel. We're gonna be here at midnight. We're on to the DPW. So DPW, the DPW was a department that's seen a significant reduction in budgets with special town meeting, where we basically were able to be within the FY '25 levy limit by not filling open positions for the DPW. Right, and that's, we had a reduction at special town meeting. Not just the DPW, the police department was affected, and I think town buildings were affected on that, to reduce that FY '25 number by roughly $300,000, $325 if I'm not mistaken. So we brought that number back, but then reduced it again as part of the override. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything you want to speak to, Tim, our DPW director?
Well, I think that when I worked with the finance committee before and I came in, I think we pretty much did level fund. The only thing that was different was the contractual pay raises that, would increase the budget a little bit. I think the reduction, that we have 2 positions that aren't filled. That's pretty much a reduction in your services to town right there. And my crew works very hard. We come to work at 6:30 and you get solid 8 hours till 3 o'clock. We get pulled all kinds of different directions, so sometimes services are slow. But, that's how it is with a small crew. I don't have a problem with a small crew as long as the town understands that sometimes the response time to get things done takes a while, because we have emergency things that we have to do also. We could be working on a project and we have to go do water. The water department takes up a lot of time, the DPW's time. And that's what we got. We've got an antiquated water system that needs maintenance, and we keep it flowing. Over the past 6 months, we've reduced the amount of water usage by, I don't have the exact numbers, I was with the water superintendent just before the meeting, and it's incredible the amount of water that we've been saving, with the amount of leaks that we fixed. And savings on electricity, because the pumps aren't running. Sometimes the wells aren't running for 6 hours now, which before a day, 6 hours a day, and before they never shut it off. So,
When you say a small crew out, like, what's the crew right
There's
now?
three highway, we have a foreman and 2 truck drivers and me. That's the DPW. Water department has 1, and we actually just hired a second starting Monday. And the sewer department has 3, which they pretty much, they maintain. They do a really good job at what they do at the sewer plant. And, they're out on the road just like us, and they also plow. The three sewer guys plow with us in town.
How many miles of road in town?
117, plus parking lots, plus everybody's half driveways and everything that's deemed that the town has to plow. It's, when it comes to plowing, that's what sucks up a lot of overtime, because we do so much plowing in the town of Barre. Road miles with, road materials, that takes, a huge amount, just buying salt and sand.
Yeah, one thing you'll see that we have a real overrun in snow and ice accounts. You'll see us in one of our articles moving some money around to take care of the debt there. One thing to understand is we have $130,000 worth of salt that we ended up, because the state held back salt because it was using so much. And then all of a sudden we got the thing, when the snow was pretty much wrapped up.
Right.
So
Well,
we have 100,000 plus of that resource this year, which will start out with something that we'll have already paid for, and it won't come out of FY26, it'll be out of FY24.
And that was a problem, we couldn't get salt, and I emptied the barn. On that March storm, when we had the flooding and the washouts and all of that, we pretty much emptied the salt shed, the supply that I had. So I had ordered double, because we didn't know when we were gonna get it. So, it doesn't go bad, it's in the salt shed, so that $100,000 is on the 25 budget, but we're gonna be, that 100,000 is already in the bank for the 26 budget. And most of the, the overrun on the maintenance account was due to the amount of work that the equipment needed and paying an outside contractor to come and do the maintenance, do the mechanic work. Until we got, I can't say enough about the hires that we've done, the mechanic, the new administrative assistant, everybody in the water department. They were excellent hires, and they're doing a lot of good for the town of Barre.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the comments.
But those are important overrides.
I'd like to say that just as a citizen, I've seen the water department and the DPW, and they are day and night. So I want to give them kudos for, I hope they can hold on, right?
Yep.
Crazy question, I'm sorry. She was just saying that with the override. I'm looking at the DPW and it's showing a negative $10,178, all right? But it looks like we're gonna be giving them another $100 and something thousand in overrides. But he's operating at $10,000 less, according to what you have for the end sheet.
Yeah.
The end row. So why are we calling that an override, his department?
Well, because
He's operating under his budget from 25.
no, because I prefaced that we reduced his budget at special town meeting.
By
Right.
80,000.
By that number you see in the override there, the 85,000.
Yeah.
Our FY25 budget was $85,000 higher, but the town needed to balance the budget, so we reduced and we eliminated 2 roles at special town meeting. So what you're seeing there for the override is bringing it whole. And then it's also, we've seen a reduction in the fuel account, right? 15,000, the override brings the fuel account back up to level. And then we see a reduction in the overall road expense account. And that brings that up to, the override brings that back up to where the ask was for the road. So we're essentially at his ask, or that department's ask.
Right.
Right, but that's why you're seeing that 85,000 extra, because we reduced that from the current fiscal year to stay not being in a 2.5 situation. So that's what he's talking about. We cut 2 of his positions. He's
Right.
operating with less folks right now.
All right, so with that extra override money, he'd be operating at 10,000 less on his budget? At the end, I mean, you've got that in.
No, he'd be operating at the 787,499.
figure is without.
Which is an increase over last year.
All right, so that negative 10,000, that's just,
That's if the override doesn't pass, that's what it's at right now, it'd be the negative 10,000.
if it doesn't.
And minus the
got it.
position.
Doesn't pass, right. If it doesn't, so that means those roles don't get filled, those positions don't get filled, and everything kind of just remains status quo.
All
The
right.
reason it's 10,000 less is because the fuel account is missing that 15, like that number there, that 15,000.
And that's a fuel account that also services the police department and the fire department.
Correct, yeah. It just comes out of that one budget.
Yeah.
Who sets the budget for paying for, like, I know we pay the resource officer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pay for the cruisers up there, when the police officers are up there. If they have to do investigation and there's extra time involved in that, can I ask, because you guys in the finance committee might go into the school department or whatever, why aren't the other towns sharing in that expense?
Well, that's what Dr. Marshall was kind of alluding to earlier, it's the Quabbin Regional, they haven't come to an agreement to fund that role with SRO, because there's, who manages that position? Is it the police department or is it the school? So there's a little bit of a conflict there right now.
You have to be sworn officers in the town of Barre in order to be able to act.
Yeah.
Within the town level?
In Barre.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
If you're a sworn officer in Barre.
Right, because I'm sure there is investigative work after hours and everything else. So the town of Barre is absorbing
Of course.
a lot of money,
Yeah.
which would help them out greatly.
Oh, absolutely. We're gonna move beyond the police department though, okay?
Sounds good.
We're on to, so snow and ice removal, like, that's been level funded. That can be a deficit spent account, which it was in this fiscal year. We see that on the warrant with using our free cash to pay for that. Streetlights are up $4,000. We're actually overexpended in streetlights this year as it is, over the budget. They're expensive. Electricity is not cheap. Cemetery department. So the cemetery department, they have a fund in there for $5,000, which they do scans. Excuse me, for the older cemeteries. They're doing like a multi-year scanning to find graves and confirm that the graves are in the correct spots. So that to get the level budget that takes that out, putting it back in on the override there would be that $5,000. There are something like, what is there, 17 cemeteries in town, Barry? There's a lot.
21.
21. And I know they've been doing this for at least 4 or 5 years now as a multi-year project, so. Any questions on that? Board of Health, level funded for the most part. Inspector of Animals, level funded. Council on Aging. So Council on Aging, they did put in for a part-time receptionist, which was actually about a $10,000 position. 5,000 of that was grant funded. The ask for them was the other half to be funded through the budget. That is eliminated, that position is eliminated even with the grant as part of the level, the non-override budget, but bringing that position in with the override. Any questions, comments? Veterans agent, pretty much level funded budget. And we'll get into the library. I know Mr. Hood here has some comments, so I will give you the floor, sir.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, I guess, explain a little bit about how the library budget works. So looking at the TA recommendation column, the 347, 987, how the library budget works is wherever, if there's any increases to the budget at all, part of the library expenses needs to increase. It has to be 19%. 90% of the total operating budget that we have has to be spent on circulating items. That's a state requirement. So if salaries go up or any of the line in the budget, the top three lines of our expenses, which is books, media, and public education, has to increase so that those three add up to 90%. So in the TA recommendation budget, one of the first things I did when I took over as director was take a look at other towns that are similar in population to ours, see what their hourly rates were for their employees, and see where Barre stood. And we felt like 30% less than what similar sized towns were paying their employees. So with the last two town administrators, we agreed that over the next 3 years, starting last year, we would do gradual increases to the library staff to slowly bring them up to where they should be. Last year, we had a 4% increase in addition to the COLA, so it ended up being around, I think it was 2% COLA last year, or 2.5%, so around 6% increase. This year was a 5% increase. Next year was planned to be a 7% increase in addition to whatever the COLA was for that year. So that column has the increases for all of the hourly staff. And I do want to mention, usually when I say full-time people, the supervisors in the library are not full-time. All of them work less than 30 hours a week. And they're drastically underpaid. So bringing everybody up by 7.5% is $2,500-ish per person for the year, which is not a lot. Percentage it looks like it's a lot, but it really is not. So that budget has those increases for the staff that we agreed upon previously, and the increase to the expenses to match that 19%. In the balanced budget, for us to balance the budget, that means that the staff can't get that previously agreed increase. It eliminates we have to take that money from somewhere. And I budget down to the penny in every single line. So a lot of the times we go over in utilities every year because they're pretty low. I can't take it out of those three lines that are expenses for the state requirement. So the only place that I can take if we need to cut is our office supply line and library supply line, which is included in the expenses. And those are funds that I can take out of our state aid every year. And state aid is where we pay for programming, we pay for, actually those two lines, the office supplies and library supplies, don't cover what we need for the year, so the additional funds I take out of state aid. If there are supplies, janitorial supplies, we don't have it in the budget for that. I think we budget maybe $1,000 for the year in janitorial supplies, so we use state aid to cover any overages there. And when we use state aid for things, that's money that we set aside specifically for programming. And the way that the state works as far as when they determine how much we get in state aid every year, depends on our statistics. So our circulation counts and our program attendance counts. So if we take money, that $5,000 and then some, out of state aid, that's all money that we don't have to provide programs or services to the town. And then they're going to take a look at that. Our program numbers are going to go down, our attendance, our circulation is going to go down. Next year we'll get less in state aid. The year after we're going to get less, the year after we should get less. So it's using state aid is specifically intended to support additional services, services that the towns don't fund, that the town doesn't fund, like programming and outreach. And the only thing that I can really equate it to is it's like any of us using our any emergency funds that we have to pay for groceries. So it's once it's depleted, and we don't get that money back. So it's not sustainable. And then it sets us down that spiral. So it's going to be really, really hard for us to provide the same level of services that we're providing, the same level of programs that we provide, and it will likely lead to turnover because the staff is already so underpaid. It's the same kind of thing, they can go to most the libraries in the area or a different job entirely and make considerably more money. So that's where we stand in that.
So Joe, with the override,
Mm-hmm.
how deficient is that number?
The 20 grand?
Yeah, no, what would you need in the override
About 20 grand, yeah, it's around 17,000 or whatever, so that 347,987 column satisfies those staff requirements and keeps all of our expenses where they need to be for the state, and will keep all of our services where they are.
This, the 327,987?
Nope, something right next to it, 347.
347, okay, so you need the $20,000 override to pass?
Correct.
Correct, okay.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
What he said.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you for that, Joe. On to recreation. So recreation is level funded across the board. These are different grant type programs. Felton Field Commission is, they mow the lawns and maintain the field down there. All level funded there. Level funded at Parks and Commons. Wachusett Greenway.
What is that?
What's that? That's,
What is the Wachusett Greenway? That's something new?
no, well, it says new here. I've been on the finance committee almost six cycles, and it's been a line item since I've been here. It's the
What is it?
rail trail maintenance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so pretty much, Wachusett Greenway takes the rail trail from 122 into Rutland, and East Quabbin takes it from, like over here at 32 down into Hardwick. Historical Commission, level funded $1,200. Holiday decorations, $3,000. Here's one of those fixed line items that are kind of jamming us up, right? And we got the county retirement. This is a cost that, you know, it's really non-negotiable. It's a $108,000 increase to the town. Any further comment on?
No, unfortunately, we don't really have the ability to negotiate. It's worse than the school situation. The County Board of Retirement tells us what they need, what they want, and we more or less have to fund it.
Is it dependent on the number of people we have that are retired, or?
It's dependent on a number of factors, so yes,
So
that's part of it.
the
They get to
formula-
they get to decide whether retirees get a COLA or not, and decisions like that that we don't get a say in. More or less, once they give us the bill, we have to pay it.
And our health insurance line is up by 65,000.
Yeah, we were, I think, around 11%, which sounds terrible, and it is. However, the average was over 14% for most in the pool that we're part of Maya, which is an association of towns, and the highest was 19%. So for once, we were below average, and I was grateful for us being below average. The Insurance Advisory Committee's been working very, very hard to try to lower our insurance costs. We've introduced a new deductible plan as an option in the hopes that some employees may be interested in it and also see relief because it's not going to be as expensive as the non-deductible options. But as much as we can try to combat it, a lot of the cost increases in health insurance are just simply out of our control. The new weight loss drugs, the over-consolidation of the health insurance industry in Massachusetts that's happening, the failure of entire hospital systems that's being allowed by the state to happen, and the mergers between major hospitals in Boston, over-reliance on traveling nurses, it's just all compounding.
Can I ask a question? Where does the town get the health insurance?
So our main provider of health insurance is Blue Cross Blue Shield. We contract with them through an organization known as MIA. It's the Massachusetts Interlocutor Insurance Association, which is basically a pool of towns. It's all municipalities that come together. It's a nonprofit, and it helps us pool in order to contract with companies like Blue
Is
Cross.
the town available to go through the state GIC plan?
I've asked
I think that we could, but we
Because
have.
don't they have a larger pool of people to get lower costs?
It's a possibility, but there's a number of factors we have to consider. MGL requires us to consult with our unions on health insurance matters, and I can tell you, and I think Lieutenant Brown can concur on this, our unions are not interested really in changing our current insurance
It's one
situation.
collective
If the cost
voice.
is
You
gonna
can't
come down
individually
anyway.
negotiate with the union. It's one collective voice through a healthcare advisory in a town. It's not like you go to the police union and they say no. you gotta
Major
do it forever.
changes,
Maya is the one that doesn't want you to go to the GIC.
major changes in insurance usually require all of the unions to have a say in the process, fire, DPW,
It's
police.
not like private sector. They don't have decision making on it. The law dictates how the insurance runs.
The Insurance Advisory Committee is certainly advisory, so yes, the select board could make decisions,
Could
but
be lower cost for the townspeople
Might be,
also.
it could be.
might be.
I brought up groups like the Teamsters offer healthcare. Bigger unions offer a healthcare alternative as well. But towns that I've run into with Maya, this is the case.
There is funds on there for the override for the OPEB trusts, which town usually will do as an article out of free cash. I do know OPEB is severely underfunded, not only in this town, many towns.
That is a flex number.
That is a flex number.
So we have $120,000 in that trust. Our liability is probably 10 to 20 times that amount.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is something we are required to be audited for. Every other year, we have an OPEB audit.
And what exactly is that?
It's.
Other post benefits, so it covers our expenses like retiree health. We're supposed to have some funding set aside for that. But Greg is right, virtually no town, I think that has OPEB has it fully funded. It is a problem for many.
Only the W towns that
Only
sell
W
Boston.
towns.
Really fully funded.
Oh, Weston and.
Yes. General insurance, essentially level funded up $5,000. And then we get into our debt, principal debt interest, which really doesn't have a huge impact to the overall because these are funded either through debt exclusion or they're coming in from they're being funded through the enterprise funds. And there is a lot of other details in terms of what the overall balanced budget is, the exemptions of the debt, the state aid, you can see all those revenue numbers as they flow through. And where we get to the budget gap, you see we're looking to the budget gap for FY26. We're looking not only for an override, but also a transfer of stabilization funds, which, to the moderator's point, not an ideal situation. We want to be building our stabilization fund, not retracting it, because it does have long-term negative impacts to rates to borrow down the road. It's a tough situation, tough spot. And we have the overlay balance, our OPEB, so it's just some of our other funding balances here. And you can see what the projected levy limit growth is with the new growth of estimate of $96,000, where the levy limit is roughly $10.4 million for FY26.
And we will be at our levy limit, needless to say.
One thing, just to clarify, we walked through some of these accounts with people, giving us particular information as to why we may have underfunded something and whether or not we should increase the override number. And so are we going to go through these tonight and make that decision? Or are we just saying, thanks for the information, but we're done?
I'm open for recommendations.
I certainly, I would make some recommendations for what they're worth. Certainly as one, I think getting through some of the, before we get to the police, there's no way we're going to have even close to the level of services we currently have if we don't increase that override.
I'll have to speak a little louder.
So you're asking that, you're making a suggestion that we should increase the override higher than the $100,000?
Yes. Unless, and I would potentially make a recommendation, just me, what does it matter? I would look at that OPEB number and potentially decrease some of that. But I mean, if we're talking about the police situation, I definitely would say, I mean, because that puts the library at the risk of the override as well. There's not a lot of places, but I think the ambulance, if we're lucky enough to get that override position back, that should be
That's true.
so the override is good there, I think. I think it's light for police. And, the treasurer's, treasurer collector?
Right.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
that was a $7,200, I think, mistake.
$7,212
Yes.
for the
Yeah.
treasurer. And then Ellen had suggested that the $10,000 for the town clerk not be subject to the override. And then for the police, the additional amount to bring them to their level services number would be $71,400.
That's purchasing a new police vehicle.
No,
I don't think it is.
No, that's
No,
not.
that's not blue, that's excluding.
So next year it'll go up another 7,000.
The cruiser has not been in the operating budget at all. So it's been an article on free cash. We've been trying for years to get in the operating budget because it's a recurring cost and it's a best practice for town finance to have a recurring cost in operating.
Our last town administrator talked you out of that while we were going down that avenue.
I don't know if they talked us out of it. I don't think it was in the budget.
Yeah, she took it out.
Okay, well, anyway, obviously, I don't know what you want to do with the override 10,000 that's in for the town clerk. I think a good point was made. It looks like we're gonna have to do that anyway. Because we expect that we will move forward with the debt exclusion anyway, somehow, subsequent to the town meeting if necessary.
I suggest that maybe you want to consider dropping that OPEB amount
Yeah.
by $10,000 to pay for the town clerk election expense.
That's a good idea. Good idea.
Yep, we agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll entertain a motion to reduce OPEB
I'll second.
by $10,000.
You guys have to do that.
Yeah. And amend the line on the town clerk to adjust to the 29,995. Is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So, would you be willing to consider the police department?
So the police department's in there at 100,000 override now.
Yeah.
First, before we do that, I'd like to,
It could be amended on the town floor.
No, I just, you know, the less confusion possible, but, you
Yeah.
know, I'm, this is, you guys are driving the bus.
Yeah.
I'm just,
You keep saying that. I don't think we are.
you know, I think the town meeting's driving the bus, but
But it's not, because you've already put through an election.
we haven't yet,
I
but
think
we're,
the select board is driving the bus.
well, I guess that's a good divide it.
Two-fold process.
Well,
Can
see,
I just make a comment? I mean, you're putting the taxpayers in a really tough place, between a rock and a hard place. I get what we need, you know, when things are needed, but people who are retired don't get raises ever, okay? Any COLA, on a good year, it breaks even with the health insurance increase.
That's
On a
good-
bad
like you say,
year,
that's a good year.
that's a good year if we break even, because there's no raise. On a bad year like this year, July 1st, I take an $85 a month cut because of my health insurance portion that I have to pay going up. It's when so my income goes down every year, it never goes up, and yet my taxes have been skyrocketing over the years that, so it's a very difficult thing, and when you're looking at, I understand people need a living wage, I need to live too. It's just a hard thing, so when you're looking at what you want to give people, just keep in mind your retiree population in town doesn't have any more money. So you're really putting us in a tough place. I don't wanna see things cut, but on the other hand, anything that raises comes out of my operating budget, which is groceries, electricity, fuel oil. There's no gravy in there. There's nothing to take from other than necessities. So if you're looking to add things, please keep that in mind.
Have the receipts, the tax receipts come in at a slower rate as we go forward?
Things are so expensive, I don't think it's lack of revenue coming.
Oh, no, our real estate's coming in around 90% like it usually does. Most people are in escrow, so it's paid on time, automatically. In fact, we've had some people we're refunding because they double paid us on a quarter. That happens sometimes.
Through the mortgage facility.
Yes, most people have escrow now, so we more or less receive the funds. Where we sometimes have difficulty collecting is motor vehicle. Some people wait until their license has to be renewed before they pay, which is a very expensive thing to do, but some people, that's what they do. So we don't get the money until it comes in 5 years later through the deputy collector. But generally speaking, we are getting the revenue. I would agree with the finance committee. It's more a matter of our costs are outstripping our ability to generate revenue. That's really the situation. And almost all of our unanticipated revenue that we get that isn't expected is plugging those deficits that we're having, and that's why we also struggle to have free cash.
I'm all for raises on the unions, I want workers to get paid a decent wage, I really do. But at some point, I just see us robbing Peter to pay Paul. We'll be back there next year for an override, and the year after, and the year after. I don't see a way out of it.
Well, we don't have to buy any more fire trucks.
Should be set on that for a while.
20 years.
Pardon?
20 years.
They don't last forever.
So we do have the
Not yet.
situation here with the treasure collector department, being 7212 below. Do we take that also out of OPEB?
Hey, keep in mind OPEB is an override amount, so it doesn't,
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't really help us gain money.
Right.
Yeah, understood.
I'm not saying we should do that.
It makes sense to have the cut subject to if the override doesn't pass, but if we have the override pass, it would be nice to be able to keep those services more or less level.
So we could, for the override,
For 7212.
and add that 7212 to the override.
Or you could take it away from OPEB, because that's an override number.
It is, yeah.
So that assistant treasury salary, that person is gonna do a reduction in hours unless.
They would
figure
have,
out
yes,
how
a
to
reduction
fund
in
that.
hours. And you have to remember that a lot of our payments, though they are coming through escrow, there's still a number of citizens who pay by check. There's a lot of check volume that has to be processed. There's a lot of mail that has to be processed. And my assistant treasurer is the one that takes the money to the bank when there's cash payments too, and departmental deposits. So fewer hours for that person will result in a reduction of services, and it will displace work on the other assistant who is not getting more than a normal COLA, but would be expected to work substantially more, and that could result in burnout and more replacement.
So we put that at, my suggestion or motion would be to add the 7212 as part of the override amount for the treasurer collector department, but further reduce the OPEB,
By that amount.
so the net override amount does not change to the town.
But if we're gonna do anything with the police, that will change significantly the override amount. If we're gonna
Well, the
add
police have 100,000 in the override right
Yeah, but they're looking for more.
Yeah, I totaled it up, it was $71,400 would bring them to their level services budget request of $1,143,379.
now. So it's less than the override amount.
So it would be in addition to, so the override increment for the police department would increase by that
Yeah, it
$71,000.
would be $171,400 for their override number.
The budget they presented was 1,143,000, right?
Yeah, 1 million,
And then
1,043,000.
the balance budget is exactly 100,000 less than that.
So now they want more on top of that?
I'm just confused on where the other 70,000 is coming from.
Well, is what they want 1,143,379?
Yep, that was the department request minus the police.
Okay, so basically, if they, so the 100,000 is sufficient?
Correct.
Okay, so we.
I don't know where that 25
This is what Jane.
Right, am I understand that correctly?
Hang on.
Does he want the override number to be 125?
Yes, 125,
He said he's getting a $125,000 cut, but we're just trying to find out.
from
how
level
quick-
fund.
From level fund. The chief mentioned that.
Well, the level fund, the FY '25 was 1,071,071, wasn't it?
Well, let me see, my computer might die.
It's in FY '25. FY '25 for police was 1,071,979. Which is over here in this corner.
Police,
You're right, Maureen.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to, that number should be sufficient. If
The
it passes to get them to the
Yeah, I think so.
$1,143,379.
yeah, so the police,
Need the 100,000 minimum.
yeah, what that was, they had a reduction, that's right, they had a $20,000
Last year.
reduction for the special town
Right.
meeting.
Yeah.
So the chief's saying roughly 125,000.
So we need,
Yeah.
instead of it being 100,000, we need it to be 125,000, so that's another 25,000.
Okay, they took 20 or 25 away from the special.
Yeah.
We're 100,000 away from the level fund budget, or what was requested, I guess.
You need 125,000.
So there's a $25,000 increase over the override that we put in there,
Correct.
which was 100.
Correct.
If-
So plus 25?
So that was voted,
Yeah, I
that's
understand.
what he's asking.
I understand.
Yeah, that
Part of
makes
my
sense.
concern is, and I'm gonna talk about the library was one of the only departments that followed the town administrator's directive back in January. And they came and they presented an honest, level funded budget. And other departments just basically ignored it and they asked for additional money. I feel like departments that followed what they were supposed to do are being punished because they didn't ask for more than they were told to ask for. Like, it's just frustrating. You know, we're looking to overfund one department and then underfund another one.
Well, if the FY '25 library, and Joe, help correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Well, the FY '25 budget for the library was $330,278,000, correct?
FY '25.
FY '25. Okay, so your request for operations that would make it all work is $349,287?
The next one over, 347,997.
347,997, okay, so we have, we have that, okay, number with it, but we're gonna have to get a $20,000 override to get that number.
Would you have asked for more if the town administrator told you to present the budget?
Yes, I would have.
And that's my issue. He followed the directive and other departments didn't. So now other departments are gonna get more out of an override than a department that followed the directive.
Well, you guys are.
I would just go back, I don't know how, they're completely different types of departments.
They are
One
different
is
services,
324/7, 365, get called in, respond to emergencies.
Public safety.
You know, I'm the one that's on, you know, I'm on call 24/7, I respond all hours of the day and night to big calls.
I
You
don't
can't have
devalue your
turnover.
work, but I, like, you're a town employee, just like they're a
Yeah,
town employee.
I totally agree.
You know,
Yeah,
they provide a
totally
pretty good service to the
different things, yeah.
community as well.
All right, so going back to the police department. Go, Tim.
I just want to know, the DPW did not request any total funds. It's level funded, so the library was not the only
Yeah.
budget that was in. You must have
you
forgot
guys-
about me, Mr.
Yeah,
O'Grady.
no, you guys have been level funded for 10 years.
Sort of.
I know that, but I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Yeah, I didn't say every department.
Yeah, you did.
He did.
I'll go back and watch the tape.
All right, so on the police department real quick, that number is correct, right? So I'm looking here, with the reduction, there's actually about $25,180 difference, so,
So we need to add 25,000 to the override.
yeah. And that would bring them to the department requests to bring some of the items back. That, let me see here, so that,
That gets that extra, that gets that other position that wasn't filled, right?
no, what it does is it brings back police training, which we reduced by $5,000 at special. It brings that back up to the level funded. It also brings up, police purchase services, up by $10,000, which was reduced at special town meeting. And it brings up, cruiser maintenance by $2,000 as well.
I'm gonna go back to the crazy stuff, right? If we, the study for 21,000, the reserve for 15,000 comes up to 36, right? Can't the finance committee or the select board or somebody, have like special requests for that money to put the reserve in, so it's not duplicated every year? You're bringing it up to 20,000, but you're gonna add 15,000 every year going forward. The reserve fund's gonna just become a slush fund. The study fund for 21 is going to keep getting funded but not used, have to go into the reserve fund. We're gonna have a huge reserve, but at the cost of all the taxpayers and some of the departments losing money.
Well, I mean, quite frankly, the reserves,
The reserve right now is at 5, you wanna bring it up to 20, it should probably be at 100, but if you're requesting an extra 21,000 every year for a study that's only being done this year, no, that override's going in for a yearly basis.
and I get it.
Okay.
But you're complicating it. It's
No,
it's
it's not. It's an extra $36,000 every year. 15 for the-
Because you don't have to
15
vote
the
for it every
reserve.
year. It doesn't have to be a line, that $21,000 does not need to be a, we're on FY '26, right?
Yes.
We're not worried about FY '27.
Right, but
So-
to get the override. you
I'm
have
about
to keep
done
that
with the
in mind.
conversation about the $21,000, right?
It's all done?
Yeah.
Just so it's clear, the override is to increase a cap.
Yep.
The town is not compelled to spend to its cap.
That's correct.
The town can spend less if the town wants to. We
don't-
don't have to spend that 21,000.
We don't have to put it on the budget.
And
You
if
don't
put it
have
on
to
the
put it on
budget,
the budget
no.
we
each
could
year,
lower
right?
everybody's taxes.
Yeah.
But it'll be funded like going into 27, because this is going into the 26.
We're on
budget.
26 though. We're not talking FY '27.
From now until next summer.
So then they drop it off,
Yeah.
everything will come.
We're back onto the police department and trying to find the number we need for the override.
We believe it's 125.
125, 180 to be exact, but I'm sure they can suffer $180.
Yeah, I got a question. Could you split this override into two questions? one being for all the town services and one being for just the public safety, being the fire department, ambulance, and police?
I don't believe
Because I
so.
think if some people weren't interested in the 2.5 at all, they may be interested in voting for the public services part of it.
So
Some towns do.
I can answer how you would do. So,
I mean, can it be done?
yeah, sure,
That's all
sure,
I
it
want.
could be done on town meeting floor. And what would happen is that somebody's gonna make a motion for this big bundle of things. And somebody could offer an amendment to delete everything on that bundle that isn't a public service.
Public safety.
Public safety,
public
it's all
safety,
public
yeah,
service.
that isn't a public safety. So,
Okay.
or, say, only include whatever, fire department,
Well,
police
I'm
department.
saying if you just put it on the ballot,
No, so this isn't, we're gonna be at town meeting, there's no ballot yet.
okay.
So what's gonna happen is, at town meeting, the town is gonna decide how much over the 2.5 does the town want to go. And then the select board is gonna write a ballot question that people vote on later to confirm or reject that decision of town meeting. So town meeting could go and say, we love all of this, let's spend all this extra money. And then the larger town, the whole town goes to a special election and says, nope. And then we're stuck with the first batch.
That's why I wanted to have a second question for just the public safety part of it. People that want to vote,
Oh,
may not
on
want
the
to vote
ballot.
for the whole, yes. People may not want to vote for the whole bundle, but they be willing to vote for the public safety part of it.
That's an interesting question. So that doesn't affect anything that happens this month. But the select board certainly could talk to their council about whether they wanted to offer people multiple ballot questions to fund different amounts of the override.
I'm just thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
That's all.
I'd recommend putting a treasury job in there, because if we're not able to collect money, we're not able to pay anybody.
All right.
Yeah, but they got a budget already.
All right, we need a motion for this police amount. To change the override amount from the $100,000 to the $125,000.
Motion to increase the override for the police department to $125,000.
And are we reducing that from OPEB?
For both, correct.
And reduce the OPEB. Is there a second?
Is there money left in it?
Not much,
There's a little bit.
not
It
much.
was 120,
No, okay, there was,
127.97.
originally.
Yep, then you took out two
We took
other
a
things, so
40.
you had 32,
We're down to 32 in OPEB, so we got,
so less than $8,000 going in.
with the 25, it leaves like
If you're
7K.
robbing Peter to pay Paul, I'll second it.
We're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and that's if it even passes. All in favor? Aye. All right, so we got that. So just to make sure everyone's clear, on the override amount for the treasurer collector department, did not previously have an override amount. That now has an override amount of $77,212. The police department, the override amount has increased from $100,000 to $125,000. The town clerk, the override amount, how did that work?
You have to take it from OPEB.
Yeah, but OPEB's an override.
Right, so the town clerk number is within the budget, and therefore, we will need an additional $10,000 to come from the stabilization fund. Not specifically for that purpose,
Yeah.
but to overall fund the budget in
All
its
right.
entirety.
So, thank you for that, Mr. Balakonis. So that means we will be reducing the OPEB number minus the 25,000 from the police department. And then minus the 7212
Yep.
from the treasurer collector. And then in the breakdown, the stabilization fund transfer would need to increase from 103,796 to 113,796. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
So at the end of the day, the bottom line, with those adjustments, the bottom line override request to fund the town services. It's important to note, these are the services that the town has had for years, and it's just maintaining those services. We're not adding positions, where the police department actually lost, they're down to 10, they've lost a position. We're not, I guess technically there is a potential position of a receptionist at the Council on Aging for $4,000. But other than that, this is just to maintain the services that we've had for the past 15 years or so. It's not really looking for a drastic, just costs money.
What is that new number, Greg? Do you have it?
Yeah.
By the way, can we not finalize these numbers at a town meeting versus bringing it to a ballot, an additional ballot? Can we not, because it cost us whatever it cost us?
You need the ballot, it's required by law.
When's the deadline that you have to notify the state that you want a ballot election? Is that already passed?
No. All you have to do is the selectmen have 35 days to call the election, okay? So we have to give you 35 days. In other words, if we wanted it on the 1st of July.
Why don't we wait until after the town meeting?
Well-
You'll gauge, if it passes, then you know you need it.
Well-
If it fails miserably,
Well-
you want a second bite of the apple.
Yeah, I do. So at any rate, that we have to have a final vote by September 15th.
Don't you want to listen to the constituents? Don't
I
you
do.
want, like,
I
but
do.
you don't want the town meeting to dictate.
I've talked to people in town, right, that can't be here in town meeting. And they're citizens and they have a voice as well.
Show up at town meeting.
That's understandable. That's very understandable. I just was trying to think about how we could have one meeting, one important meeting to resolve all of these things, because it's cost us money to have a ballot.
The ballots, just like a debt
required.
exclusion,
It's
like the
required.
ballots
So if it fails
required.
twice, we've thrown $10,000 in the trash.
Yeah,
If you look at it that way,
so
that's
yeah.
all your perception.
So if it fails twice, then we've had a problem.
A couple of suggestions. So tonight we heard from different department heads the kinds of things that you're going to lose if it doesn't pass. I think that not many people at town meeting are going to have heard that discussion. So I would recommend, if somebody, whether it's the select board or you, make a list of bullet points so that you can just stand up to town meeting and say, this is what the department heads have said, if we don't pass, are the things you're gonna lose. We're gonna lose the school resource officer, we're gonna lose this, we're gonna lose that. Just, rather than having every department and having to have this meeting again, which is run 2.5 hours, I don't want that at town meeting.
Good point.
So if somebody could just consolidate a list, only include the big stuff.
Yep.
And I think that would be helpful. So, completely separate issue. Corey, you have the power as a member of town meeting to offer an amendment to defund that $10,000. And you don't have to do it before the vote on the override budget happens. So what you could do is, if the override budget fails, and you want to prevent the select board from spending their money, you could make a motion to reconsider $10,000 of the original budget. So you can go back. So that's an option that's available to you or to anybody else.
But it sounds like they've already committed us, or they would have already committed
I don't see how they
us.
could have because town meeting hasn't given them that money. So until there's a budget item that will spend, that gives them money to spend on an election, they can't have one. So, that's an option.
Is there anything else we need to cover today?
Is it your,
Before we quit, before we adjourn this meeting, I want everybody to remember how smooth this is going, and we have an experienced town administrator such as Greg Belluconis. And we need to think the next time we bring in alternative people to sit in that seat, we ought to visualize, can they demonstrate experience as Greg has to facilitate the operation of this town? That's all. Just think about it.
Great comments, yeah.
Are you going to go through and vote favorable, unfavorable on all the warrant articles, or are you doing that at a meeting before?
We passed over some citizen petitions,
Okay.
but we covered all of that excluding the dam and some zoning pieces.
And the select board, yes.
The selectmen meeting as well.
Okay, great.
So we knew this was gonna be a longer one, so we tried to front load that. Well, that should all be documented on the booklet, right? All be documented on the booklet.
Okay, so we'll work, Greg will work to get the omnibus budget squared up.
yeah, the override, you need to revote the number because it's been adjusted tonight. So at your next meeting.
Well, we're gonna have our next meeting on the 23rd.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do it Friday if people are available. I don't know, do we have to update the agenda if you wanna do that?
You mean the 24th,
24th is town meeting.
right?
23rd is town meeting, no, I mean, if we wanna vote it before the town meeting. You know,
Yeah, I just wanna go through and check my numbers
No, I agree.
because what happened was we increased some of the budgets, but we decreased the amount of the OPEB, which was the override.
Right.
So the net is probably gonna be a couple dollars less
Yeah.
on the override than what it was when we came in tonight.
Okay, that would be good.
We should make everything happy.
Well, in my head, I don't think it's less, but I hope you're right.
You know? Because we decreased OPEB, so
Yeah,
that.
well, that
So no,
was, you know.
Are we meeting before?
Do we need to meet before?
Well, I always say we should.
Let's see, we'll put it on the books. We'll
Yeah.
put it on the books to meet a half hour ahead of time.
Bring your shorts and your waterproof.
I know.
You typically do anyway.
What's that? You're gonna wear suits?
Well, yeah, an old school. Repeat. Yeah, 6 o'clock at Rutgers.
Maureen, I'm gonna go through the numbers and just a little weird right now. I don't wanna.
We can chat.
We have a motion to adjourn. A second, all in favor? Aye. We're done.